welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And we've got a bumper sack of goodies for all you good boys and girls.
Jesus Christ.
Welcome to the most festive episode of the year.
We are going to be looking back on our most memorable royal moments from 2021. But before we do that, we have some topical events to talk about. We had hoped to be able to talk about Kate Middleton's Christmas special on this episode, but it is unfortunately not airing until Christmas Eve.
This is, of course, her big carol concert in Westminster Abbey. We got to see all the people arriving on Wednesday, and we have a lot to say.
Yeah, let's talk about the outfits because, as you said, there is a lot to get through here. If we run down the list. So, first off, Sophie Wessex. What the fuck was going on here?
This sort of corduroy bathrobe with white trousers.
White trousers. Crisp white summer trousers. Nutty behaviour.
Yeah, truly very out there.
I guess she was trying to do a sort of Christmas colour scheme with the white and then the green blouse and the burgundy...
The Christmas brown.
The burgundy coat.
She was dressed like a Yule log.
I saw somebody compare it to that coat that Nicole Kidman wore in The Undoing.
Oh, very generous.
Rude. Very rude to Nicole.
Yeah.
Loved that coat. A lot of you liked Princess Eugenie's outfit. She took a big swing.
Yeah, this was a miss, though, for me. And I think you as well.
Yeah, it was a forest green cape dress. I think it was by Chloe. I think we also saw it before, but it had very ugly buttons.
Yeah, sort of beige buttons.
I saw them described as gold. Those are not gold buttons.
No, I mean, I think if you're going to wear gold buttons, they should read as gold in the photos. Otherwise, yeah, you just get this kind of weird contrast.
It's a pity because all I could look at was those. They were sort of like 90s cupboard, like kitchen cupboard handle style buttons.
Yeah.
I thought it was so weird that I read in the Telegraph that Princess Beatrice and Pippa Middleton wore the exact same coat in different colours.
Oh, wow.
So Beatrice's was kind of a tan and Pippa's was like a deep green.
Okay.
You're just inviting comparison there.
Yeah, like a weird kind of duo to be coordinating as well.
Unless it was sort of a show of sartorial solidarity or something.
Okay, I mean, quite a boring show of sartorial solidarity, if so. And nothing compared to James Middleton's wife, Elise Thevenet. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but, you know, that's as good as my French gets.
Yeah, the Middletons were out in force, and I thought she was the real standout. She wore a quite boxy red patterned suit with a white shirt that had this nice high collar on it and then brown boots. It was very Parisienne.
Yeah, very French, kind of Sandro kind of style.
Yeah, it looked like it was straight out of Cézanne or Maid or one of those kind of places. Mm-hmm. But the main event, of course, was Kate Middleton herself in a red Catherine Walker coat dress with matching shoes and clutch bag.
Yeah, Mrs. Claus.
Surprised her mask didn't match as well. I thought this outfit was notable for a few reasons. You know, one, the return of the coat dress.
Yeah, we talked a lot this year about how she sort of seemed to have moved on from the coat dress, which was once her signature silhouette. But clearly she wanted to return to this, remind people of her classic Duchess style.
Yeah, and as well as that, you know, number two reason this was notable to me was some of you may have recognised this dress as the same one she wore to Prince Philip's funeral, although in black for that, obviously. And when I noticed this, I was like, why would she wear the same dress in a different colour to this most holly jolly of events?
Like, she obviously must have known that we'd all make this connection immediately. And she did kind of speak to the congregation about the losses many have suffered during the pandemic. And it seems like she may have wanted to emphasise through her clothing that she and the royal family understand what people are going through. To me, this just seems quite badly thought through, because wearing a jolly version of your funeral outfit doesn't seem to me to be the best way to convey that message.
Yeah, it was like a little bit bizarre to me. I thought it might have been maybe more effective to wear like a piece of jewellery, for instance, with some kind of connection to Philip, whether that was something he had given her as a gift or maybe something she borrowed from the Queen that had some kind of sentimental value there. I think that maybe might have done the job.
Yeah, that would have been a way better way to do it. As it was, it just felt like, to me, quite confusing a choice. But some people were speculating that the reason pretty much all the royals were out...
Well, Tom, there was no Prince Charles and Camilla.
Yeah, notable absentees. But, almost all of them are out for the carol service. And people were speculating that, was this a diversion tactic following the revelation of a photo of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell taken at Balmoral, which came out during Maxwell's trial on the sex trafficking charges that's going on currently in New York.
Yeah, so this photo shows Epstein and Ghislaine relaxing at the Queen's log cabin on her royal estate. It's on the same bench where the Queen has previously been photographed, so that's how people were able to identify it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't stated when this picture was taken, but it's believed to have been sometime in summer 1999 when Prince Andrew invited them to the estate.
This photo coming out is obviously really bad for the royals. I mean, we did already know that Andrew has invited Epstein and Ghislaine to royal events and things, but having this kind of photo evidence come out as something that people can just point to, it's really the last thing that the royals need on top of all the other shit that is going on for them.
Yeah, especially when they can do that side by side with the picture of the Queen in the same spot and showing how cozy they look. And I mean, who would have taken that picture?
Yeah.
But overall, the Maxwell trial has been fascinating to follow, has been devastating to follow. We have recommended the podcast True and On before here, and they've been going into the courtroom every day and doing daily updates through their podcast, so we'd highly recommend that if you guys are interested in following it more closely. However, I really don't think the Queen would have rung up the Tyndalls and the Yorks to try and distract from this news.
Yeah, this service was planned weeks ago, and importantly, the royals would not have known when Andrew was going to come up in the Maxwell trial, as in down to the day.
And he already did come up anyway in week 1. This wasn't the first mention of the royals in this trial.
Yeah, so I do think it seems a lot more of a coincidence that it's happened rather than something that was planned, which doesn't mean that it hasn't, worked perhaps in the royals' favour. It's just I don't think that they orchestrated it that way.
I don't think it has worked in the royals' favour, but we can talk about that in a second.
A more convincing conspiracy theory would be that the British government instructed the royals to make a big flashy diversion from the scandal that's currently going on over a Tory Christmas party at number 10, which apparently broke lockdown restrictions last year. But I also don't believe that that is something that has been orchestrated either. I do think it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, and I don't really have any grand conspiracies about this event, to be honest. And as I said earlier, I don't think it did distract from anything, because the front pages the following day were all about this number 10 Christmas party scandal and the pictures of Jeffrey and Ghislaine at Balmoral.
Yeah.
There was only one paper, the most royalist paper, the Daily Express, which had a picture of Kate alone on the front page. And I think overall this event, what really struck me about it was that it was yet another reminder of how lacking the royals are in star power without Harry and Meghan. Kate is really their only hope.
Yeah, she's having to try and hold all the focus, I think.
Before we get into our most memorable moments of the year, I thought we could talk about the most memorable royal looks from the year. Mm-hmm. Or rather our favourites, because obviously there were some very memorable ones like Meghan's birdshit dress during the Oprah interview, or Prince William's statement look for the Earthshot Prize. I know that was a particular favourite of yours.
Oh, I hated that look so much, and the way he kind of looked so pleased with himself, like he was doing something totally out of the box.
With the green velvet blazer and the turtleneck.
Yeah, I'm still not quite over it.
Our favourites, though, we've got two. So the first one, I'm sure comes as no surprise to anyone. It was Kate at the Bond premiere.
Yes, this was for No Time to Die. She turned up in that incredible gold Jenny Packham gown, which had a sort of cape moment going on as well.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we have seen Kate on the red carpet many times, but I feel like she doesn't always rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
And this was a case of absolutely exceeding all of our expectations for this event. Pure glam, like not even royal glam, like Hollywood glam. And it was so sparkly and a total scene stealer. That was the outfit that everybody was talking about from the night, not the cast.
Yeah.
However much Daniel Craig and his tight little pink jacket wanted everyone to talk about him, it was Kate. She was the moment.
As we said at the time, the dress was from a collection that Jenny Packham designed to commemorate 60 years of Bond. It's inspired by the film's legacy of powerful women, which we found to be quite an odd sentiment.
And we still don't know who Kate's favourite Bond girl is.
No.
A question that will haunt us. We were so into the very dramatic hair. A lot of you had problems with the hair and felt it was like kind of aging, but we thought it was very like old Hollywood and super glamorous. Also the makeup, the false eyelashes was so different from what we usually see from Kate.
Yeah, especially the kind of lockdown Kate that we've seen over the last 2 years predominantly.
Where she's been like, tell them I've been doing my own makeup every day, my own hair.
Yeah. But yeah, it made it feel very special.
And as we said then, and we'll say again now, this was, apart from her wedding day, the best she's ever looked.
Yeah.
Total wow moment.
Our other top look actually came just before this one. It was Meghan's red Loro Piana jacket and matching red trousers that she wore on the Sussex's kind of, quote, royal tour of New York. That's the one where they went and did the Global Citizen Vaccine event and went to the UN, amongst kind of other things, including Meghan reading her book, The Bench, to some school kids in Harlem.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for me, this really stood out as like, this is what like post-pandemic power dressing looks like. It was much more comfortable than we usually see from these kind of royal engagement style events. And, you know, if Kate's gown was giving a sort of 2021 take on royal glam, I think this look speaks to Meghan's personal style and her idea of what a modern royal looks like.
Yeah, it's workwear, but it's not like stuffy, and it's got this kind of casual, approachable feel in the cut of it, but it's also very expensive and very luxurious. It's kind of seemed to me to sum up that Sussex combo of call us Harry and Meghan, but credit us as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, you know?
Yes. And I think, you know, I particularly loved that oversized fit,
Yeah.
the sort of boxy cut. It felt very fresh, very fashionable. And, you know, particularly when we see the sort of traditional royal emphasis on extremely structured tailoring.
Yeah.
This was so unlike what we usually expect from the royals. And the colour, you know, we talk all the time about how we wish Meghan would wear more colour, that she seems to love neutrals, even though we don't think they really sing on her the way this like gorgeous berry red did. And we've seen, whenever we see her wear this outfit, it's such a slam dunk, and this was no exception. This was probably the best of all.
Yeah. I mean, I loved that the jacket was reversible, and the other side is that much brighter red, which we got as these kind of pops of colour at the cuffs and lapel. It felt like very cool and modern, and it kind of worked with the kind of overall modern cut of this kind of 2021 suit to keep driving it into a very fashion-forward look, which I really enjoyed.
Agree.
Before we get into our most memorable moments of the year, we did get to see some Christmas cards.
Yes, we saw the Christmas card from the Cambridges, which shows all of them on holiday in Jordan. As the Daily Mail put it, a family holiday in the desert with dad in shorts, the youngsters in their summer gear, and mum showing off her sun-kissed glow is the theme for this year's greeting from the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, who have delighted fans with a family portrait taken on a secret trip to Jordan earlier this year.
The Daily Mail just always sounds like inappropriately horny whenever it's talking about Will and Kate. But yeah, Will is definitely in shorts. Mm-hmm. This is the most in shorts I've ever seen from this man.
Those are some short shorts clinging to his thighs.
Legs all the way up to his neck.
He brought out the guns for his vaccine photo, and now he's got the pins.
Those slim pins.
Not that slim at all, Tom.
Muscular.
Ooh.
Well, they were in Jordan for this photo, and apparently Jordan holds a special significance for Kate because she spent part of her childhood there. It's where her father worked as a flight dispatcher for British Airways. I didn't know that until they released this press statement.
I'm pretty sure we've talked about that in the podcast before, but clearly your brain wiped it out immediately. I think it's very notable that they decided to go for a photo from this sunny summer holiday abroad in a year when a lot of people, you and I included, have not been able to go on holiday abroad.
Yeah, I mean, we should say, like, it's not that people weren't always allowed to, like, some people did go on holiday, but it was a lot more difficult. A lot of people were a lot less inclined to go on holiday.
Or couldn't afford it.
Exactly, yeah. So the issue isn't that they've, like, broken any rules or anything, but it's that this just isn't very relatable.
At all.
It's so off-brand.
I know, it seems like such a departure from what we have seen the Cambridges pushing as their narrative, I mean, for many years, but particularly in the pandemic.
Yeah. It's like one thing to be making, like, really glossy, overproduced videos about your holiday to the Scilly Isles or Cornwall or wherever it was, versus, like, a picture from your, like, abroad holiday.
Yeah.
You know, I also did wonder, as a kind of side note, how did they get there? Because I would have thought they would have been spotted if they'd been taking a scheduled flight. Because, like, we hadn't heard anything about this holiday to Jordan at all. This was a total surprise when this photo dropped.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's not a great picture.
Oh, no. That's the only relatable thing about this whole photo is that it's not a very good one of them.
I mean, obviously, it is a challenge to get a picture with 3 kids where everyone looks well.
And you can see that challenge written all over Will's face.
But Tom, this wasn't the only royal Christmas card we've seen this week.
No, Charles and Camilla also released theirs. And I have to say, I was so surprised when I first saw this. Like, it's a real contrast to the Cambridge card.
Yeah, and I think the biggest contrast, obviously, is that it makes a direct reference to the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, while you have Will in shorts and Kate in her, like, olive summer dress, this shows Charles adjusting Camilla's mask at Royal Ascot this year.
Yeah, and I have to say, personally, I love it. Like, people thought it was a joke when people were sharing it online and stuff. I saw people saying, like, this isn't real. And so I didn't really take it seriously when I first saw it, although I did think this would be such a good move for a Christmas card. Like, it's very unexpected, it's very topical, and I was just absolutely delighted when I discovered that it is their official card.
Yeah, I think it's a smart move for a number of reasons. Like, obviously, the fact that it's acknowledging the unusual year that we've had, and also that it's quite a rare moment of tenderness between Charles and Camilla.
Well, we know their moments of tenderness haven't been that rare, but a rare public moment. I did think, like, was it wise to be showing this kind of, shall I say, intimate moment between Charles and Camilla after, like, this bumper year of Diana content?
Oh my God, they can't constantly be...
No, I mean, I don't agree. I'm glad, I was happy to see it, but I'm just like, is that just going to enrage a lot of people who have, you know, had their memories refreshed about
Camilla's
the whole Diana?
very existence enrages people,
That is
Tom,
true,
as
yeah.
you know well.
Yeah. But, like, as you say, like, it's good timing for this photo because the government has just announced that masks are back in the UK.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny because some of the reaction I saw online was people being like, oh my God, I can't take any more of this. You know, because there is probably a big overlap between older posh people who support the royals and who are totally fed up with having to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And seeing Charles and Camilla wearing masks in their Christmas card probably made them roll their eyes and think they shouldn't be supporting this ridiculous restriction.
Yeah, so I think, you know, if we're getting this good message right from the top, that is always going to be a good thing, I think.
Yeah, but it is very striking how these are such polar opposites.
Yeah.
You know, the foreign holiday and the mask wearing.
Exactly. Mask wearing in the UK. I mean, it's also a smart move, I think, from Charles Miller, because it did briefly make me forget about the financial scandal and the environmental hypocrisy that just surrounded Charles for this whole year. So well done for that.
We are recording this a little bit early before we go our separate ways for Christmas. So we may have missed some other royal Christmas cards that might have come out in the meantime.
Yeah.
But if there's anything hugely remarkable about them, we'll get to it in January.
Yeah, absolutely. But now we should get into our most memorable moments from 2021.
There were many things we considered including here in our year in review. There was Prince William's vaccine thirst trap. There was the Queen's absence from Remembrance Day for the first time since the 1960s due to a back injury. There was the BBC documentary, but we did just spend a whole episode discussing that.
Yeah. So we've settled on the following 10.
Which we've done in roughly chronological order.
Yeah. So the first one up is Meghan winning her privacy case twice.
Tom and I started the year in virtual court, tuning in to Meghan's summary judgment hearings on Microsoft Teams at the end of January. And we were delighted when she won her privacy case against Associated Newspapers, the publisher of the Mail and the Mail on Sunday.
Yeah, we particularly enjoyed Justice Warby, the judge in that case, saying that Associated Newspapers' case occupied the shadowland between improbability and unreality.
Yeah, and we were just so relieved that she didn't have to go to a full trial.
And looking back on those hearings, there really wasn't that much juiciness at that stage. All that came a lot later with this appeal when Jason Knauf, the Sussex's former communications secretary, who was still working at the Cambridge's Foundation at that time, submitted evidence including texts and emails that he had received from Meghan. It hasn't been that long since the hearing, so you can't be absolutely sure, but from what we can see, given the coverage at the time, it looks like the moments that will really stand out to a lot of people and be remembered are Meghan's memory lapse over authorising her aide to provide background info to the authors of Finding Freedom, and her line about pulling at the heartstrings by calling her father Daddy.
Yeah, I think that's probably the one that's going to stay with me.
Yeah.
But also, of course, there is the fact that Associated Newspapers lost the appeal, and this was a second victory for Meghan.
Yeah, and I think that will really stand out for anybody who's been following this case, and it was just difficult not to follow when you're in the UK. She won, and she won twice.
Yeah, it was a landmark victory, and I think the other major standout moment was her statement after the appeal when she referred to the Daily Fail.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will consider that to be the mic drop to end all mic drops.
Second moment was Prince Harry's appearance on James Corden's Late Late Show in February.
Yeah, because we had all, I think, been wondering when the Sussexes would make their debut TV appearance in America. And we had thought it might be Meghan on Ellen because we knew that they were friends. And we were so shocked that Harry was the one that did it first.
Yeah, and I do think, as we said at the time, that it was a sensible move because Meghan was receiving so much heat as being the one who tore Harry away from his family. So this was another opportunity for Harry on a huge platform to remind people that it was his decision to step away, or step back as he put it. And he said, we all know what the British press can be like, and it was destroying my mental health. I was like, this is toxic. So I did what any father or husband would do and thought, how do I get my family out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly this interview was so memorable for how fun and funny it was. I mean, we'd had so much heaviness in all the stories around Harry, Meghan, and the rest of the royals. Everything was so dramatic, and a lot of it was blown out of all proportion. But this was very lighthearted on the whole. And we're not big James Corden fans, but it was such a good environment for Harry to be in.
Yeah, because he seemed comfortable, he was very at ease, he was surprisingly open, I thought, in conversation. He talked about the crown, which I think you're never going to get a more senior member of the royal family talking about the crown, I think.
Yeah.
He told us that Archie's first word was crocodile. He talked about how the Queen had given Archie a waffle maker for Christmas so they could make beautiful organic waffles. And there was the story, Tom's favourite story, about how Prince Philip slams the laptop down rather than ending Zoom calls.
All my colleagues are just delighted that I've taken that on. But he was also, like, very game for a laugh. He was, like, reminding people of the old Harry.
Which I think was important because even among you and I, it really seemed like hot-headed Harry was the main view we had of Harry for a long time.
Yeah. But, like, on this, he kind of, like, swore after the afternoon tea, fell over on the bus, and then he rapped the Fresh Prince theme song.
You love that.
Oh, he's my favourite rapper, actually, Prince Harry. I'm not going to say
No, you have to keep it in.
When he went to the loo in that random woman's house.
Yeah, when he said he needed to pee. Wow. Obviously, though, the best bit was hunky action man Harry on the obstacle course.
I believe you said.
Me. Thanks to the, like, dozen people who sent us that TikTok of Harry on the obstacle course.
But yeah, the royals were reportedly really pissed off that Harry had overshadowed the Queen's video message urging people to get vaccinated. And there was a lot of talk about how he was disrespecting Prince Philip, who was in hospital at the time.
I think for us, though, or for me at least, it'll be memorable because it was the first clear indicator that the Sussexes were leaning into their celebrity and going full Hollywood.
Yeah. This is something that was, then confirmed when Meghan did eventually go on Ellen later in the year in November. But yeah, this was a real sign that the Sussexes were working out how to really use all the things that they're very good at without the constraints that would typically be on a member of the royal family.
Yeah. Before Meghan went on Ellen, though, she went on Oprah.
This was, by anyone's counts, I think, the TV event of the year.
Yeah. This was Oprah's interview with Meghan and Harry in March, which was watched by over 60 million people worldwide. And there was so much build up to this. Like, in the space of a few days in mid-February, I feel like we were going nuts at this time. Because Harry and Meghan announced they were expecting their second child. Then they put out that statement preempting the much ballyhooed one-year review and telling the royals they would not be returning as working members. And then they announced this interview, which sent everybody into meltdown, imagining what they were going to say.
Yeah, and I mean, we were just talking about the BBC documentary on our last episode and the way the royals, like, went into meltdown similarly before the thing had even aired. But, like, before the Oprah interview aired, this was when Jason Knauf kind of reared his head again to leak the bullying complaint against Meghan from 2018, the one that Meghan has since described as an attack on her character.
Yeah, and at the same time, Prince Philip was in hospital, and there was a lot of talk about how Harry and Meghan should have postponed the interview with Oprah until he was better. There was just such a heightened tension around this interview, and then actually watching it, it was even more sensational than we had expected it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, we were slightly worried it wasn't going to live up to all the hype and the fuss that had been made, but it was absolutely electrifying.
Yeah, I feel like we stayed up till like 5 a.m. watching it live. I felt like all my blood had been replaced by lightning. I couldn't get to sleep afterwards. It was just so shocking, as well as that there were so many very heartrending moments. And from really early on in the interview, like, we learned when Meghan said she didn't make Kate cry, that actually the reverse happened.
That happened so quickly.
Was that before the first ad break even?
Yeah,
it was
I think it
so
might have been.
soon.
Yeah. And, I mean, Meghan also spoke very candidly about her mental health problems and her suicidal ideation and how unsupported she was by the royal family.
Yeah, and she even talked about the royal family's concerns about Archie's skin colour.
I mean, we were all Oprah in that moment when she said that. We all, like, all our jaws just dropped, I think.
Who is having that conversation?
Yeah. I mean, there was also the line about how they didn't blindside the Queen in their stepping back from being senior working royals. And in fact, it seems like they actually sucked up to her so much in the run-up to that.
But Harry said that Charles stopped taking his calls.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That was a real shocker. There were, it was obviously, we were most interested in what Meghan was saying, but Harry slipped in some bombshells too. And he also said that Charles had cut him off financially. But yeah, I do think the line about the concerns about Archie's skin colour was the most explosive moment, as they refused to name which royal had made the comment, only saying that it wasn't the Queen or Philip. So it became this like blind item that has taken over the whole rest of the year.
Yeah, it's had like huge longevity. I guess probably in a way because it hasn't been specified who it was, it just is something that is so open to speculation, and something that I guess the royals will have in their mind as something they need to refute through their words and actions for a long time.
Immediately after the interview, though, the Queen responded by saying recollections may vary, which we thought was an extremely shitty thing to say.
Yeah.
But that Harry and Meghan and Archie will always be much loved family members and the matter would be handled privately.
Right, yeah.
I guess, though, she didn't tell Prince William, because our fourth most memorable moment of the year was when he took it upon himself to tell reporters, "We are very much not a racist family," while on a school visit a few days after the interview aired.
That was an amazing moment. I mean, our eyes were like rolling out of our heads when we heard this.
I think this has to be one of the most tone-deaf comments ever made by a royal family member, if not any member of
the human race. But yeah, this is family that is notorious for its history of colonialism and racism and the huge fortune that the British monarchy has made from slavery directly.
Yeah, and it, you know, coming straight after the Queen saying the royals were taking these allegations seriously and that, you know, we were expected to trust them to deal with it privately, and then you have the second in line to the throne just flat out denying there is any racism in the family.
Like, come the fuck on. Ridiculous. And like, this was combined with the fact that Will said he hadn't spoken to Harry and Meghan since the interview aired.
Yeah. It really showed how much he did not care. And I think, if you add to this the fact that the Cambridges were the only royal household that refused to release their staff diversity figures this summer, when Clarence House's proportion of ethnic minority employees was 8%.
Which is not a very good figure at all. And we can only assume that the Kensington Palace figures are lower.
Yeah, I mean
otherwise they would reveal them in order to make Charles look bad.
So yeah, I think in the aftermath of the Oprah interview, the Cambridges really took a hit.
But also in the aftermath of this interview, we got our fifth most memorable moment, which was Kate at the Sarah Everard Memorial.
This was the same week as the very much on a racist family comment, which is just wild. That March was a wild month. Kate Middleton was seen at a tribute in Clapham Common for Sarah Everard, who was a 33-year-old woman who was abducted while walking home from a friend's house in South London and later found murdered by a policeman. And I think Kate's appearance there was surprising for a number of reasons. As we talked about at the time, you know, firstly, that planned vigil had been cancelled by police as a breach of lockdown restrictions, but Kate attended anyway, which was something that we saw civilians being brutally punished for later that day.
Yeah, but it meant that a lot of the front pages were Kate at this vigil rather than focusing on how some of these women were treated later in the day.
Secondly, Kate wasn't wearing a mask, which indicated to you and I that she wanted to be recognised, even though masks aren't mandatory outdoors here.
And, I mean, thirdly, Kensington Palace confirmed that it was her and said that she had brought daffodils from the garden at Kensington Palace because she remembers what it was like to walk around London at night before she was married. So, like, this was very much the messaging from Kensington Palace, like, she was there, this is her, despite the fact that, you know, the police didn't want people at the protest. She shouldn't have been there in the first place. And the fact that Kate really doesn't do these kind of things historically.
Yeah, and I think we said at the time that the fact that this was being presented as Kate really relating to this woman was so stark to us compared to the family's complete silence on Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Because clearly they can't relate to anybody that's not white.
Yeah, that was definitely the implication, or is what we got from it. But, I mean, as we said at the time, we had very complicated feelings about it, given the context of everything else that was going on that week. And it was made more complicated when the Mirror later reported on its front page that Kate had written a deeply personal letter to Sarah Everard's family.
Yeah.
In my mind, this is the kind of correspondence that if the palace had wanted it to remain private and just between her and the family, it would have remained private.
Yeah, and of course we don't know I find it hard to believe that Sarah Everard's family would be rushing off to the Mirror to let them know about this, but we don't know what was going on.
No.
I do think while many people, including us, had questions about Kate's motivations here, it did mark a big shift in her public image or public role, to me at least, because it was a silent gesture, but one that was really loaded with political implications, something that Kate had previously shied away from, as you said, for example, with the Time's Up black dress protest at the BAFTAs that Kate very visibly did not take part in.
Yeah, and I think it's really up to you how you view this as to whether she was like hijacking this moment for herself or not. I mean, all of this stuff was happening at such like a crazy time for royal coverage that it was really hard not to read things as trying to distract from what Harry and Meghan were saying. And I think that even if it was Kate's intention to pay genuine tribute to this woman, the timing of it and the way they went about it, that was lost, and it was really overshadowed by thoughts of what the royal family might be doing to protect themselves.
I really don't like thinking about Kate hijacking this moment for her own personal benefit, but those were the questions that were
it was part of the
raised
conversation.
at the time. Our sixth most memorable moment of the year, this one's a bit tricky as well, because we don't want to call the death of Prince Philip a memorable moment, but the funeral was definitely a major royal moment of the year for a number of reasons. First of all, there was the wall-to-wall press coverage surrounding it, which gave us a preview of what will happen when the Queen dies, but also became the most complained about moment in British TV history.
Yeah, it garnered 109,741 complaints, breaking the record previously set by Jerry Springer, the opera, in 2005, which received only 63,000 objections. And that was following criticism from Christian groups.
Yeah, but the BBC actually apologised for how how excessive its coverage was, and said it would learn lessons from this.
But all eyes during the funeral were on Prince Harry and Prince William. It was their first in-person reunion since Harry and Meghan had left the royal family and moved to America.
Yeah, in over a year.
Yeah.
And, leading up to it, there was a lot of drama about what they were going to wear and the dress code for the funeral, whether Harry would be the only one of the male members of the royal family not in military uniform because he no longer has his honorary military appointments. But then we heard from... there was a regimental military historian who said that Harry actually would have been entitled to wear a ceremonial dress with the Queen's permission.
Yeah, I had actually forgotten about that until we were talking about it recently. That was such an interesting detail.
Yeah, and there was all the stuff about how Andrew wanted to wear a particular uniform, but he had been promoted to a rank, but the promotion had been delayed because of all the scandal around him, but he still wanted to wear it.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the end, they all wore civilian dress. And on the day, we did see Harry walking between Will and Kate, and the three of them chatting, and there were overhead shots of them in conversation as well.
And the media coverage was very much casting Kate as this peacemaker. She was the one bringing the brothers back together after Meghan drove them apart. And it was just offering up another way to pit Kate and Meghan against each other.
Yeah, and I think, specifically about Will and Harry, we were wondering, was this display a sign that things were on the mend, or was it, at the very least a sign that both sides were eager for us to think that things were on the mend? Because then it did turn out to be the latter, obviously, given everything that has unfolded since.
Yeah, but I mean, it was very clear from this that at the Commonwealth Day service the year before, there had not even been the desire to create an illusion of getting on.
Yeah,
everyone was just so stony-faced from the Cambridge side.
Yeah, and Harry.
Yeah, and Harry too, yeah. But they put on the same kind of show, Harry and Will, later in the year, in July, when they unveiled that awful statue of Princess Diana in the sunken garden at Kensington Palace together.
Although Harry left 20 minutes after it was unveiled and then headed back to America the next day.
Yeah.
And I think, as we said then, this was really the bare minimum you'd expect from the brothers given the occasion.
Yeah, very much the bare minimum.
Our seventh most memorable moment of the year was the birth of Lilibet, Harry and Meghan's second child, their daughter. And in June, she was born, and they named her Lilibet Diana as a tribute to Harry's grandmother and mother.
So the name Lilibet was coined when then Princess Elizabeth was a toddler and she couldn't pronounce her name properly. Her grandfather, King George V, started calling her Lilibet, which was like an imitation of the way that she was trying to say her own name. Lilibet, Lilibet, Lilibet. But eventually it stuck, and like Prince Philip would call her it as a little pet name and stuff.
And I think, you know, our reaction to it was after the very unconventional choice of Archie Harrison for their first child. Lilibet Diana was a total 180.
Yeah, this was very much like a royal deep dive, like into something that, I mean, in a way is very traditional, but in a way having a nickname as a name is like quite an unexpected twist. It's still got a bit of, for me, like the Sussex new way of doing things, even when they reference tradition so heavily.
Yeah, I do still think Lilibet is like the most royal name you could possibly choose, as we said then. And at the time we wondered if the name choice was an affectionate nod to the Queen. Was it a reminder to Lily of her royal heritage? Was it a fuck you to the royals? And, you know, a way of saying we're not going quietly into non-royal life. Our daughter is still a royal, even if you won't give her a title or security. What do you think now?
I do think that it is a way to tie Lily to her royal heritage, because what I've seen from this year is that like the Sussex base is so much in America. Like I know when they first moved there was all this kind of talk about how much they'd be in America, how much they'd be in the UK. Obviously COVID has happened, which has, you know, limited travel, but it does seem like they're very much set up there in terms of like the kind of people they talk to and the press outlets that they reach out to and things like that. So it makes sense to me that, you know, maybe Harry would want to just have this reminder for his kids in the years to come about where they come from on his side.
This name choice also sparked one of the ugliest disputes of the year about whether Harry had sought the Queen's permission for the name or merely informed her that he was going to be using it. And yeah, this like really bitter back and forth went on for so long, and I think you and I both felt just so sorry for this poor little girl, you know, already being saddled with these huge like legacy names, Lilibet and Diana. Yeah,
these names which, you know, they have so much story to them already, and, you know, as a child growing up you might want to know the stories behind your names. And now to have this argument tacked on to that is like really depressing, I think, for, like you say, for Lily herself.
And as far as we know, none of the royals have met Lilibet in person yet. So, you know, I wonder when and where they will. Maybe in 2022?
Yeah, perhaps. Number 8 is the Queen's secret lobbying, which is very near and dear to my heart.
This was The Guardian's months-long investigations into the Queen's consent procedure. It's been one of the highlights of our year for sure. It revealed the Queen has been using an arcane parliamentary procedure to secure special exemptions from UK laws and lobby ministers to make changes that would benefit her own interests.
I mean, if you want to know more about Queen's consent, you can basically listen to any episode of ours from this year. But like what it is essentially is that the Queen's consent requires the government to send draft legislation to the monarch, or on occasion to the heir to the throne, so Charles, so that they and their lawyers can examine whether it affects their personal interests, their private property, or their public functions. And the royals, according to The Guardian's investigations, have ultimately vetted more than 1,000 laws using the Queen's consent procedure since the beginning of her reign in 1952 through to the present day. And this like ranges from land policy to inheritance to race relations. Like The Guardian has a searchable database on its website, so you can see them all there. Like some of them, like the, you know, land policy, seem quite boring, but there's like a lot of very good and important stuff in there.
Yeah, and the first report from this series was in February, and it detailed how the Queen had been granted an exemption from a transparency law in the 1970s so she could hide her private wealth.
Yeah. And then in March, we learnt she had secured a special dispensation from a 2017 law protecting cultural heritage. So this was barring the police from searching the Queen's Balmoral and Sandringham estates for looted or stolen artefacts. Why do you need to ban the police from coming in? I mean, their argument is that there's nothing there to find, so why would you want to come in the first place? Like, fucking bullshit.
Even more shocking than this was the June investigation into the Queen's exemption from laws preventing race and sex discrimination.
Yeah, like including the detail that she had banned coloured immigrants or foreigners from serving in clerical roles in the royal household until at least the late 1960s.
Although they were allowed to work as domestic servants.
I mean, it fucking tells you everything you need to know about the royal family.
Yeah, and the Queen has remained exempt from these equality laws for more than 4 decades. This has made it impossible for women or people from ethnic minorities working for the Queen's household to complain to the courts if they believe they've been discriminated against.
Which, like, you know, if you think that sounds illegal, like, yeah, it should be. But in July, the report revealed that the Queen, one of Scotland's largest landowners, had secretly lobbied Scottish ministers to change a draft law to exempt her private land from a major initiative to cut carbon emissions.
And she did this year, and it made her the only person in the country not required to facilitate the construction of pipelines to heat buildings using renewable energy. The only person in Scotland, and that person is one of the largest landowners in the country.
And it became like an even bigger issue when it was announced that she would be attending the COP26 climate change conference in Glasgow. I mean, as we know, she eventually had to pull out of that due to health issues. But like, at the time we were like, she's going to be delivering like an opening address to these people in Scotland where she's been lobbying for exemption from this law.
Yeah. And I do think, you know, as a whole, and there was a lot more to it than these ones. These were just our highlights. There was, as Tom said, many times that she has done this. But I do think these investigations didn't get the attention they deserved. And I think that's partly because it's very easy for royalists or people who are sympathetic to the Queen to just dismiss The Guardian as a Republican outlet.
Yeah.
And I think we certainly won't be forgetting these investigations.
Absolutely not. And they've been really useful, I think, for anti-monarchists because it's something that you can really point to when, you know, some people will say, but the Queen doesn't really have any power. She's just a figurehead. It's all symbolic. So, like, just leave her alone. It doesn't matter. It's like, no, actually, these are some things we can now point to and say she has this power specifically to become exempt from laws that affect everyone else.
Yeah, it's made that concrete. Our 9th most memorable moment of the year was Virginia Giuffre's civil suit against Prince Andrew.
Yes, so Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who's one of the women trafficked and sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein while she was underage, filed a civil suit against Andrew in court in New York, accusing him of rape in the first degree, sexual battery, and sexual abuse. Like, it's not a criminal case, so we're not talking jail time. What's at stake here is money. So if Andrew loses this case, he faces a damages bill of apparently up to £14 million.
That'll be coming out of Mummy's bank account.
Yes, as far as we're aware, Andrew doesn't have that kind of cash.
So she filed this lawsuit in August, and what followed was an absolutely absurd game of hide and seek.
Oh my God, yeah.
Where Andrew hightailed it to Balmoral to avoid officials trying to serve him papers. And this went on for well over a month. I think it was like 6 weeks, where his team were insisting he hadn't been formally notified of the claim. So it wasn't until late September that Andrew's lawyers finally accepted he had been served with papers.
This was like absolute madness this time. It was like, is this really happening? And like, while it was all happening, the Queen signalled her support for Andrew, apart from letting him hide under her skirt at Balmoral or wherever. But she was letting it be known that she wanted him to remain as Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, despite it being extremely unlikely he will ever return to public duties.
That was so disappointing, that story.
Yeah. I mean, it just shows that, like, I think we said at the time, like, the royals claim to have so much respect for the armed forces in particular. It's really one of their things that they go on and on and on about, and they have such close ties to. But the Queen is very happy to have Andrew in this role, despite not being able to fulfill any of the duties associated with it. So,
Yeah.
like, how much is she thinking about the armed services and how much is she thinking about her own fucking family?
Yeah, and even at Andrew's own home in Windsor Royal Lodge, security guards, paid for by the Queen, stopped multiple attempts by lawyers to hand him the documents, according to reports. And the Queen is also paying Andrew's legal fees with the funds from her Duchy of Lancaster estate. And it's estimated that the cost could be in the millions when all is said and done here.
The first hearing for this has been scheduled for January the 4th, so that's going to be the first thing on our agenda for 2022. It's set to go to trial then between September and December of next year, provided it isn't settled or dismissed.
And as we've said before, Andrew has always denied the allegations, and his lawyers are expected to argue for a dismissal. We spoke before about that 2009 settlement agreement between Virginia and Jeffrey Epstein, which Andrew's lawyers are trying to argue absolves Andrew from responsibility, but Virginia's lawyer has rejected that notion. But also, Andrew's lawyers applied for a dismissal last month, saying Giuffre has initiated this baseless lawsuit against Prince Andrew to achieve another payday at his expense and at the expense of those closest to him.
The Queen.
Yeah. And according to The Guardian, these filings also contain references from friends and in newspaper articles to Virginia being a money-hungry sex kitten and recruiting girls for Jeffrey Epstein. So they're really, on the offensive. They're going on the attack here.
In a very disgusting way.
And I think it could backfire.
Yeah, I really hope it does. But I also hope that this time next year we'll be talking about how Virginia has won the case and dragged Andrew through the mud and got her full £14 million from the Queen.
Me too.
Our 10th most memorable moment, you might have been able to predict. It's Spencer.
This year would have been Princess Diana's 60th birthday, and we certainly saw plenty of her or her story on screen. All throughout awards season, The Crown was winning left and right. Then there was that dreadful Diana the Musical on Netflix. But as you know, as Airheads listeners know, our favourite take on the Diana story was Pablo Larraín's film Spencer, starring Kristen Stewart.
There was so much anticipation and I guess trepidation as well from some people around this film, in particular, the casting of Kristen Stewart. But in the end, it was an absolute triumph and will probably win Case Due an Oscar.
I think so too. I mean, I would rather if it was Lady Gaga, but I think it will be Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, it's definitely a race that we're very invested in.
And, our impression after seeing it, as we said in one of our 2 episodes about it, was that Spencer was maybe too arty, too much of an art piece, and possibly too alienating for many royal watchers or fans of The Crown. And I do think anecdotally that seems to have been the case. But as I said then, I thought it was a very fresh and bold approach to telling Diana's story in presenting it as a fable from a true tragedy rather than a conventional biopic.
Yeah, it really stood out compared to other versions of the Diana story. And it's, specifically interested in Diana as her own person, not just Diana in the context of the monarchy or in the context of global worship. And I think the filmmaker Pablo Larraín, being Chilean, may have something to do with that lack of deference towards not only the royal family, but also to Diana as well.
Yeah, and it's not a perfect film, but
No.
but it does offer a more nuanced, complex take on Diana than I think we've seen in the many other iterations of the Diana story.
Yeah.
And I think some people felt the ending was too saccharine. Ending spoiler. Skip ahead a minute if you don't want to hear. But I think after the horror film that preceded it, I definitely took joy and felt myself quite emotional seeing Diana making her escape to KFC with Will and Harry in the end.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, some people might say that this isn't a memorable moment in the grand scheme of things, but do you know what? This is our list, and we will always remember this film. And it should have been more memorable for more people.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Airheads this year.
Yeah, spending another year with us.
I know we haven't been releasing as many episodes this year as before, but it's been, a crazy time.
Unprecedented, some would say. And, I'd argue that they are better episodes for it.
Well, I think it was quite an unusual year in royal watching because the first half of the year was so packed and then it kind of slowed down.
Yeah.
But I have seen some people posted their Spotify Wrapped, and seeing Airheads on your lists made me like choked up.
Yeah, that was really amazing. It was totally unexpected as well.
So yes, we hope you guys have a lovely Christmas and New Year, and we will be back to talk about whatever the royals get up to over the Christmas break.
Yeah, whatever mischief.
And whatever transpires from Virginia's civil suit against Andrew, the first hearing, January 4.
Yeah. And so until then, take care, and thanks so much for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there.